There is a specific kind of poison in playing the savior. It doesn't taste like poison at first. It tastes like purpose. You look at someone broken, someone the world threw away, and you think, I can fix this. I can build walls high enough to keep the monsters out. But walls don't just keep things out. Eventually, they keep things in. And the person you saved starts to look at those walls, not as a fortress, but as a cage. I didn't know that then. I was 22. She was 15. I need to make this clear right now. There was nothing romantic about it. Not in the beginning. Not for a very, very long time. It was a Tuesday, November. The kind of cold that bites right through your clothes and settles deep into your bones. I lived in a cheap apartment at the edge of town, barely making rent. And then, the knock. Faint, hesitant, like a bird tapping its beak against glass. I opened the door, and there she was, Maya. She was the younger sister of a guy I used to work with. He had skipped town months ago, left her behind in a house that wasn't a home. A house filled with shouting, with glass shattering against walls, with things no 15-year-old should ever have to hide from. She was soaked to the bone, rainwater dripping from her matted hair. She had a bruised cheek, a busted lip, and eyes that were completely, utterly dead. She didn't ask for help. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, I didn't know where else to walk. I pulled her inside. I locked the door. I remember wrapping a heavy wool blanket around her shaking shoulders. I made her tea. I sat on the floor across from her, just watching the terror slowly drain out of her rigid posture. She flinched when I handed her the mug. That flinch, it broke something inside me. It rewired my brain in a fraction of a second. In that moment, a vow locked itself into my chest. A silent, violent oath. Nobody was ever going to hurt her again, not while I was breathing. I looked her in the eyes. I kept my voice low, steady. You're safe now, I told her. You're safe with me. She closed her eyes. And for the first time, she exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. That was the beginning. The next few years were a blur of paperwork, social workers, and fighting tooth and nail for legal guardianship. I was barely an adult myself. But I worked 2 jobs. I bought her clothes. I made sure she went to school. I became a father figure, an older brother, a guardian angel. I became her entire world. The nights were the hardest, the nightmares. I would hear her screaming from the spare bedroom. Piercing, terrified screams. I would run in. I would sit by the edge of her bed. I would never touch her. I knew better than to grab someone waking up from a trauma dream. I would just sit there in the dark, speaking softly. I'm here. The door's locked. You're safe. Night after night. Month after month. Slowly. The nightmares stopped. Slowly. The bruises faded, both the physical ones and the ones etched into her mind. I remember teaching her how to cook, the kitchen filled with the smell of burnt garlic and cheap pasta. She used to sit on the counter, swinging her legs, watching me chop vegetables. Why are you doing this? She asked me once. Out of nowhere, the kitchen went quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Because someone has to, I said. She shook her head. No. People don't just do things like this. Not for free. She had been conditioned to believe that every act of kindness had a hidden price tag. A dark condition. It took years to scrub that belief out of her soul. Years of showing up. Years of keeping promises. When she graduated high school, I sat in the bleachers alone, cheering louder than anyone else. When she got her first job, I bought her a cheap used sedan and spent 3 weekends fixing the brakes just so she wouldn't have to take the bus in the dark. Every action I took was a brick, and I was building a castle around her. But here is the tragedy of building a castle for someone else. You forget to leave a door open for them to leave. And as she turned 18, then 19, then 20, the dynamic shifted. She wasn't a terrified child anymore. She was growing up, becoming a woman, and I wasn't just her guardian anymore. I was the man who had pulled her from the wreckage, the man who had never let her down. When she looked at me, there was a reverence in her eyes, a deep, consuming gratitude, but gratitude is a dangerous foundation for love. It feels like love. It looks like love. But it is a debt, and nobody wants to be in debt forever. I didn't see it then. I was too blinded by my own pride, by the warmth of knowing I was essential to her survival. I thought I had saved her from the monsters. I didn't realize that by making myself the only safe place in her world, I was setting the stage for the most devastating betrayal of my life. Time is a strange, quiet thief. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It just slips by day, breath by breath, until you look up and the world you knew is entirely gone. 18, 19, 20. The years folded into each other. Maya wasn't the broken, bruised girl trembling in an oversized wool blanket anymore. She was radiant. She was breathing. She was alive. She went to community college. She got a degree. She started smiling, really smiling, the kind that reaches the eyes and crinkles the edges. And through it all, I was still there, the constant, the anchor, the immovable object in the center of her universe. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, invisible blurring of lines. It happened on her 21st birthday. We had opened a bottle of cheap red wine. We were sitting on the floor of the living room, the exact same spot where I had made that promise to her 6 years earlier, the promise to keep her safe. The apartment was quiet. The only light was the warm, flickering glow of a single candle on a slice of cake. She looked at me differently that night. She wasn't looking up at a guardian anymore. She was looking across the floor at a man. She reached out. Her fingers brushed the side of my face. I pulled back at first. I did. My chest tightened with panic. I told her no. I told her it was wrong. The power dynamic, the history, the age gap. It felt like I was crossing a line I had sworn to defend. But she was fierce. Her eyes locked onto mine, burning with a sudden intense heat. "Don't tell me what I feel," she whispered. "You're the only man who ever treated me like a human being. You're the only one I want. When someone looks at you like you hung the moon, when someone hands you their entire heart and says, 'You are the only one who can keep this safe,' it is intoxicating. It feeds the ego. It numbs the logic. I let my guard down. I convinced myself that this was the natural evolution of our story. The trauma was gone. She was healed. We were just two adults who had found each other in the dark. So we transitioned, slowly, quietly, from protector to partner. 3 years later, I bought a ring. A modest, simple diamond. I dropped to one knee in our tiny kitchen. She wept. She threw her arms around my neck and said yes. The wedding was small, just a few mutual friends, my parents. A quiet ceremony in a local park under a canopy of oak trees. The speeches at the reception, oh, the speeches were unbearable. They called it a fairy tale. They called me a saint. They raised their glasses and toasted to the knight in shining armor who saved the lost princess and the beautiful girl who gave him her soul in return. It sounded perfect. A Hollywood script, a storybook ending. But reality doesn't care about storybooks. Reality is messy. And our reality was built on a psychological fault line. The first few years of marriage were peaceful. Too peaceful. Looking back, the silence should have been the first glaring red flag. There was no friction. None. No arguments over money or chores or where to spend the holidays. Whatever I suggested, Maya agreed to. "Whatever you think is best," she would say. Always yielding, always submitting. At first, I thought I was just incredibly lucky. I thought we were perfectly in sync. But it was deeper than that. It was darker. She didn't argue, because she didn't feel she had the right to. How do you raise your voice at the man who literally saved your life? How do you disagree with the person who pulled you out of hell, put a roof over your head, and loved you when you were broken? You don't. You just smile. You nod. You compress your own desires, your own opinions, your own fire into a tiny silent box. You swallow your voice so you don't rock the boat. I became her husband, her best friend, her father figure. her therapist. I was her entire universe. And being someone's universe is an exhausting, impossible trap for both of you. I was carrying the weight of her past, her present, and her future. I felt a constant crushing pressure to be perfect, to never let her down, to always be the savior she needed. And she was living inside a cage of profound gratitude. A beautiful golden cage, polished, safe, warm, but a cage nonetheless. She was playing the role of the perfect, grateful wife. And I was playing the role of the flawless, unwavering protector. We were both just acting, reading from a script we wrote when she was 15 years old. I thought I was providing peace. I didn't realize I was suffocating her. And a suffocating person will eventually do anything to catch a breath of fresh air. The shift didn't start with the slam of a door. It started with a breeze, an open window, a subtle change in the air pressure of our lives. She got a job, a real career, a junior position at a digital marketing firm downtown. I was so incredibly proud. I bought her a leather briefcase. I kissed her forehead on her first day. I took her picture by the front door, just like a proud parent. I thought this was the final step of her healing. Complete independence. I was wrong. It was the match that lit the powder keg. At this new job, she wasn't Maya, the girl with the tragic past. She was just Maya, a 25-year-old woman, funny, smart, untethered. For the first time in her life, she was surrounded by people who didn't pity her. People who didn't know about the broken glass or the freezing rain or the screaming night terrors. They didn't see the scars. They just saw her, and she loved it. Who wouldn't? The happy hours started. Just grabbing drinks with the team, she would text. Thursdays turned into Fridays. 6 in the evening turned into 9, then 11. I didn't panic. I trusted her completely. I was the man who saved her life. I was her safe harbor. Why would I doubt her? Then, his name started dropping into our conversations, like small poison droplets. Marcus, just a guy from the creative department. Marcus said the funniest thing today. Marcus showed me this amazing hidden coffee place. Marcus is so disorganized, it's actually hilarious. I listened. I smiled over dinner. I didn't see the threat, because Marcus was everything I was not. I was structure. I was the deadbolt on the door at night. I was the reliable paycheck, the fixed brakes, the predictable solid ground beneath her feet. Marcus was chaos. He was loud. He was careless. He had a messy life, forgot deadlines, and probably couldn't change a tire to save his life. He was irresponsible. And to a woman who had spent a decade living inside a perfectly safe, perfectly controlled, perfectly predictable sanctuary, irresponsibility looked exactly like freedom. He didn't want to save her. He just wanted to consume her. And she wanted to be consumed. The red flags began to sprout, quietly, lethally. It started with the phone. For 8 years, we didn't have passwords. Our phone sat on the kitchen counter face up, open books. There were no secrets in our house. Then, one Tuesday, I went to check the weather on her screen. A keypad popped up, 6 digits. I asked her about it casually. "Hey, you locked your phone?" She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Yeah, new work policy. We have client data on our personal devices now. Have to keep it secure." It sounded logical. It sounded corporate. But it felt like ice water injected straight into my veins. Then came the physical shifts. The phantom changes. She started buying new clothes. Things I had never seen her wear. More skin, tighter fits, brighter, louder colors. She started wearing a new perfume. Something heavy, musky, entirely different from the light floral scent I bought her every Christmas. And the vocabulary. This is the one that haunts you the most. When your partner starts mirroring someone else's speech, it makes your skin crawl. She started using phrases we never used. Slang, little sarcastic quips. She started laughing differently. A throatier, reckless, unfamiliar laugh. She was downloading a new personality. A piece of software written by someone else. and it wasn't compatible with our life. The tension in the house began to thicken. The air got heavy. The silence, which used to be comforting, turned completely toxic. I tried to reach out. I tried to pull her back into our safe little world. One night she came home at midnight, smelling like cheap tequila and cigarette smoke. She didn't smoke. I was sitting on the couch in the dark, waiting. "Where were you?" I asked. My voice wasn't angry, just tired, just worried. The old protector instinct flaring up completely uninvited. She dropped her keys on the counter. The sound was deafening in the quiet apartment. She turned to me, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw pure, unadulterated contempt in her eyes. "I was out," she snapped, "having a life." "Maya, it's midnight. You didn't answer my texts." I was worried sick. She crossed the room. She stood over me. The sweet, grateful girl was gone, replaced by a stranger with cold, hard eyes. "Stop it," she hissed, her voice venomous. "Just stop it." "Stop what?" "Stop treating me like a child," she yelled, her voice cracking like a whip. "I am not a stray dog you picked up off the street anymore. I don't need a babysitter. I don't need a savior. I just need to breathe." The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. The oxygen left the room. She had weaponized my protection. She had taken the very foundation of our entire relationship, the safety I had bled to build for her, and turned it into a prison warden's badge. She stormed past me. The bedroom door slammed shut. I sat in the dark, my hands shaking, the realization creeping up my spine like a spider. The girl I saved was gone, and the woman who replaced her was looking for a way out. A house knows when it is dying. The walls don't crumble, the roof doesn't cave in, but the temperature drops. The air gets thin, hard to breathe. The silence, it stops being a comfort. It becomes a predator, lurking in the corners of the living room, waiting for you to speak just so it can swallow your words whole. That was our apartment now. The safe haven I had built was turning into a tomb. The bed became the front line of a very quiet, very cold war. For 10 years she slept tangled in my arms, seeking warmth, seeking protection. Now, she slept on the absolute edge of the mattress, facing away, a rigid line of spine and cold shoulders. If I shifted in my sleep, if my knee accidentally brushed against her leg, she would sigh, a heavy, irritated exhale, and she would pull the blankets tighter around herself. Like my touch was a disease, like the hands that used to hold her together were suddenly covered in thorns. Then there was the phone. It was never out of her sight. She took it into the bathroom when she showered, the steam fogging the glass, the screen glowing through the mist. She kept it under her pillow at night, but sometimes she would leave it on the wooden nightstand, face down, always face down. And in the dead of the night, when the city was completely silent, I would hear it. Bzz, bzz, 2 in the morning. A flat, dull vibration against the wood. It sounded like a heartbeat, a mechanical, mocking heartbeat. I would lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my chest impossibly tight. "Who is texting you at 2 in the morning, Maya?" I would ask the shadows. She would stir. "It's just an automated work alert," she would mumble, pulling the phone into the bed and hiding the screen under the heavy duvet. An automated work alert. I knew it was a lie. My gut knew it. My bones knew it. But when you love someone, when you have tied your entire identity to being their protector, you fight your own instincts. You lie to yourself first. I tried to talk to her, to bridge the canyon that had opened up between us. "Maya," I said one morning, pouring her coffee, "you feel a million miles away. What is happening to us?" She didn't look at me. She just stared at her phone screen. "Nothing is happening," she said flatly. "You're distant. You're always angry. You guard your phone like a state secret." And then the gaslighting began, a slow, deliberate rewriting of reality. She finally looked up. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "I'm not distant," she said smoothly. "You're just obsessive." "Obsessive? I'm your husband." I'm just asking for basic communication." "No," she snapped. "You're tracking me. You're monitoring me. Just like you've always done." "That isn't fair. I have only ever tried to keep you safe." She laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Safe. Right. You don't want me safe. You want me dependent. You can't stand the fact that I have a life outside of this apartment, outside of you. You need me to be broken so you can feel important." The cruelty of it took my breath away. It was a surgical strike. She knew exactly where my insecurities lived, and she drove a knife right into the center of them. She was making me feel crazy, making me question my own mind. Was I too controlling? Was my love actually a cage? I spent weeks walking on eggshells, apologizing for things I hadn't done, shrinking myself down to make room for her sudden aggressive need for space. I was losing my mind. I was drowning in a sea of phantom vibrations, unexplained absences, and a musky perfume that didn't belong to her. And the most agonizing part, the absolute soul-crushing irony, I was the one who carefully, painstakingly glued all her broken pieces back together. And now, she was using her newly repaired hands to dismantle me, piece by piece. I couldn't live in the dark anymore. I needed to know, even if the truth destroyed me. The quiet, accommodating husband was gone. It was time to open the door and see exactly what kind of monster had moved into my house. I never wanted to be a spy in my own home. For 10 years, trust was the only currency we had. It was the absolute bedrock of everything we built. But when the ground beneath you starts to rot, you have to dig, even if you know you're going to find a corpse. I didn't yell. I didn't throw accusations. I just went completely terrifyingly quiet. I became a ghost, watching, waiting. The opportunity came on a Thursday night. It was raining outside. A cold, hard rain hitting the bedroom window. The same kind of rain that was falling the night she knocked on my door 10 years ago. She was in the shower. The water was running high and loud. The bathroom door was shut. And for the first time in months, she had left her phone on the kitchen island. Face down! I stood in the kitchen, staring at the black rectangle. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A frantic, primal rhythm. I felt sick. I felt like a criminal. I was violating the one rule I had sworn to uphold, to always be her safe place, to never invade her boundaries. But the phantom vibrations in the dark had driven me to the edge of madness. I reached out. My hand was visibly shaking. I picked it up. I swiped up. The keypad appeared. 6 empty circles staring back at me. She thought she was clever. She thought changing her password to a work policy would keep me out. But when you spend 10 years studying someone, you notice everything. I had watched her unlock it 3 days earlier, sitting on the couch. Her thumbs moving in a quick, deliberate pattern. 042209. April 22nd, 2009. The exact date she signed her employment contract at the new firm, the day her new life began. I typed the numbers. The screen unlocked. No hesitation, no second guessing. I went straight to her messages. I didn't have to scroll far. Right at the top, pinned. A contact saved simply as an emoji. A single black heart. I opened the thread, and in one fraction of a second, my entire universe collapsed. 10 years of love. 10 years of sacrifice. 10 years of patience and protection and bleeding myself dry to put her back together. Vaporized by a glowing screen. The messages weren't just flirty. They weren't just a mistake. They were an entire, fully formed double life. There were photos, hotel rooms, inside jokes, timestamps from Tuesday afternoons when she said she was in strategy meetings. Timestamps from midnight while I was lying next to her in the dark, worrying about her stress levels. My eyes scanned the blue and gray bubbles. I can still taste you. Next time we get the room with the balcony. I hate going back to that apartment after being with you. The nausea hit me so hard my knees buckled. I had to grip the edge of the granite counter to keep from collapsing onto the kitchen floor. I couldn't breathe. The air had turned to glass in my throat. But the physical cheating, the betrayal of her body, that wasn't the kill shot. The kill shot was buried a few weeks back. in a long midnight exchange. I scrolled up, my thumb swiping through my own destruction. Marcus had asked her a question. Does he suspect anything? Why don't you just leave him? Her reply was a long paragraph. I read it once. I read it twice. The words burned themselves into my retinas forever. He doesn't suspect a thing. He's too blind. He still looks at me like I'm that pathetic, broken teenager he took in. It's suffocating, Marcus. Living with him is like living with a parole officer. He thinks because he rescued me, he owns me forever. He has this massive savior complex. I'm just his charity case. Our marriage isn't a relationship. It's a prison. And I am so tired of kissing the warden's feet. A prison. A parole officer. The warden. I lowered the phone. The sound of the shower was still drumming down the hall. A cold, absolute numbness washed over my entire body. The panic was gone. The anxiety was gone. Replaced by a terrifying, hollow void. She didn't just fall out of love with me. She despised me. She resented the very hands that had pulled her out of the wreckage. She looked at the safety I had sacrificed my own youth to provide. And she called it a cage. She mocked me. To the man she was sleeping with, she took the most pure, devoted part of my soul and turned it into a pathetic joke. I didn't cry. Tears are for things that can be fixed. Tears are for misunderstandings. This was an execution. I carefully locked the phone. I placed it face down on the granite counter, in the exact millimeter of space where she had left it. I walked to the living room. I sat in the dark, listening to the water shut off, listening to the bathroom door open. The girl I saved was dead, and I was sitting in the dark, waiting for the stranger who killed her to walk into the room. How do you look at someone when you know exactly what they are doing in the dark? How do you sit across the dinner table from your own assassin and ask them to pass the salt? That is the Cold War, and it is the most excruciating psychological torture a human being can endure. She walked out of the bathroom that night, a towel wrapped around her hair, smelling of clean soap and vanilla. She looked at me, sitting in the dark living room. "Hey," she said softly, "you're quiet tonight." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I had fed, the woman I had clothed, the woman whose nightmares I had chased away for a decade. She wasn't looking at a husband. She was looking at a mark, a fool, a comfortable mattress to land on when she got tired of her chaotic double life. I forced the corners of my mouth to curl upward. "Just a long day," I lied. My voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It came out smooth, dead. "Come to bed soon," she murmured, walking past me. "I will," I whispered to the empty room. I didn't confront her that night. Confrontation is a reaction. It is fueled by passion, by anger, by the desperate, pathetic hope that they will break down, apologize, and tell you it was all a mistake. I didn't want an apology. An apology wouldn't unwrite the words she sent to Marcus. An apology wouldn't erase the absolute contempt she held for me. She thought I was her warden. Fine. If our marriage was a prison, I was going to grant her full parole, but I was going to do it on my terms. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in dissociation. I woke up. I made her coffee. I kissed her forehead before she left for the office. And the moment the front door clicked shut, the loving husband vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating machine. I hired a lawyer, a shark of a woman who looked at the evidence and didn't even blink. "She thinks she's untouchable," the lawyer told me across a mahogany desk. "Let's show her the real world." I bought a hidden voice recorder. I placed it in her car, under the passenger seat. I needed to know the timeline. I needed to know the finances. Because while I had paid for everything, the mortgage, the cars, the groceries, she had been quietly funneling her new corporate salary into a separate private account. An escape fund, she called it, in an audio clip I listened to at 3 a.m. Listening to her voice on those tapes, laughing with him while driving the car I bought her. It killed the last lingering traces of the man who saved her. The savior died in that living room, and a strategist took his place. I gathered financial records. I screenshotted every damning text message. I printed out the hotel receipts that she carelessly let sink to our shared cloud storage. I built a fortress of paperwork, a legal guillotine, and I did it all while smiling over dinner. How was work, I would ask, cutting into a piece of steak. Exhausting, she would sigh, rubbing her temples. Marcus messed up another client brief. I had to stay late to fix it. She was looking right into my eyes, lying with the effortless grace of a psychopath. You work too hard, I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. You should take a break, a weekend away. Just you and the girls. The trap was set. Her eyes lit up. A flash of pure, predatory excitement that she tried to hide behind a tired smile. You think so? I mean, Sarah did mention wanting to go up to the lake house this weekend. You should go, I said smoothly. I'll hold down the fort. It was sickeningly easy. By Thursday, she was packing a duffel bag. I stood in the bedroom doorway, watching her fold her clothes. The expensive, tight dresses I never saw her wear. The new lingerie she certainly wasn't wearing for me. I packed your extra phone charger, I told her, pointing to the side pocket. She stopped. She walked over and threw her arms around my neck. You are the best, she whispered. I didn't hug her back. I just let my arms hang at my sides. Have a safe trip, I said. Friday morning, she loaded her bag into the trunk. She kissed my cheek. Love you, she called out, sliding into the driver's seat. Goodbye, Maya, I replied. I watched her pull out of the driveway. I watched the taillights fade into the morning traffic. The Cold War was over. The evidence was secured. The lawyer was on standby. The locks were scheduled to be changed at noon. It was time to burn the castle to the ground. Friday at noon, the locksmith arrived. Heavy brass deadbolts, new keys. By 2 o'clock, the lawyer filed the papers. By 5 o'clock, I transferred every cent of my money into a new solo account. I left her the escape fund. She was going to need it. Saturday morning, 9:30, my phone lit up. Maya, I let it ring. It rang again and again, then a text, frantic, confused. My card just declined at the hotel. What's going on with the joint account? I didn't reply. I was sitting on the porch, drinking a black coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. At 2 in the afternoon, her car tore into the driveway. She slammed the door. She marched up the walkway. Her face was flushed with anger. What the hell are you doing? She yelled. I've been calling you for hours. I had to use Marcus's card to pay for the room. She froze. The name slipped out. Her own panic betrayed her. She stood on the bottom step of the porch, her mouth slightly open, the color completely draining from her face. I didn't blink. I just took a sip of my coffee. Sarah's lake house, I said quietly. Is that what we're calling the Marriott downtown now? Silence. Absolute crushing silence. She took a step back. The defiance in her eyes shattered, replaced by a sudden terrifying realization. You, she whispered. I know, I said. I know about the room. I know about the secret account. I know about the April 2009 passcode. I stood up. I walked to the edge of the porch, looking down at the woman I had spent 10 years trying to save. But most importantly, Maya, I know about the prison. Her breath hitched, a small, pathetic gasp. I know you think I'm your warden. I know my protection feels like a cage. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a single manila envelope. I tossed it lightly. It landed at her feet. Those are the divorce papers. You'll also find a printout of the messages where you explain in vivid detail how much you despise the life I gave you. She fell to her knees, right there on the concrete. The tears came, the desperate, ugly sobbing. Please, she choked out, reaching for the envelope but looking up at me. Please, it was a mistake. He meant nothing. I was just confused. You weren't confused, I said softly. You were ungrateful, and that's fine, but I resign. I turned around. Your bags are packed in the garage. The code is still the same. Take them, and leave my property. Where am I supposed to go? She screamed, the panic taking completely over. I don't have anywhere to go. I stopped at the front door. I looked back over my shoulder one last time. Ask Marcus. You're his problem now. I walked inside. I closed the heavy brass door. I turned the new deadbolt. Click. It was the loudest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It has been 2 years since that day. I sold the house. I moved closer to the coast. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus left her 3 months later. Chaos, it turns out, isn't very good at paying rent. I don't play the savior anymore. I learned the hardest lesson a man can learn. You cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You can only delay their destruction and risk your own in the process. When you build your life entirely around rescuing someone in the dark, you forget how to live in the light. I am finally in the light, and I am never going back. There is a thin, dangerous line between protection and possession. When we rescue someone from their absolute lowest point, do we inherently expect their eternal gratitude in return? And if we do, is it truly love? Or is it just a transaction dressed up as a fairy tale? Tell me in the comments, at what point does being someone's savior become your own worst trap? If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the Betrayal Files. We have many more stories waiting in the dark. Until next time, stay vigilant.